I'm joined by Charlotte Langley, who's CMO of Bloom and Wild. Charlotte, thank you for giving up very precious time this afternoon to go through some of these questions with me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So, a bit of a context that I'll give quickly in terms of people who may be listening to this and kind of want to sort of see what you were doing prior to your current role. So, I would say, and you'll obviously talk in more detail, but looking through your background, it's actually you've got a wealth of experience in brand strategy and brand campaigns. You've worked for some incredible consumer-facing brands. So current role, Bloom and Wild. I'm sure you'll tell us a bit more about the role and the business, but certainly my favourite flower company and Europe's #1 online flower company. So it's an amazing brand that you and the team have built. But what really comes across in terms of you and your background, your personality, so great on the growth mindset, something we talk about a lot when we do our Q&As, very ambitious and driven, and I love the entrepreneurial side. But you've worked with big businesses as well. So, L'Oreal, Tesco and Sainsbury's, Superdrug and Boots. So some really huge blue chip businesses, and now a very fast growth business that you're in at the moment. So what would be great if we kind of dive straight in is, would you mind just giving a bit of an insight into your career journey, the highs and the lows, and any kind of standout moments for you? Because I know our audience would be really interested to kind of find out how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I started out at L'Oreal on their grad scheme, which was a super training ground. I still think back to some of the things that I learned, not necessarily in the grad scheme, but during my kind of 7 years at L'Oreal. And it also, I think, was really great to learn my craft at a company where it was marketing led. So L'Oreal is kind of known globally for being one of the best sort of marketing companies in the world. And so actually, that was really nice because I just grew up, from a career point of view, assuming that marketing was really important. Whereas actually, I'm not sure everybody gets that experience. So I was very lucky to have that and really understand like the central role that marketing and branding can play. But I actually, after the grad scheme, I took a commercial role, first of all, because on the grad scheme, you do various things. And I'd done both commercial and marketing, and I had job offers in both. And I decided to take the commercial because I thought, you know what, I don't want to do commercial forever, but it'll probably be quite a good thing to learn. And that was so true. Also very good from a personal point of view, learn to negotiate. So when you buy a house, it's great.
You're an estate agent's nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. But in that experience of working Sainsbury's first of all, and then on Tesco, and on Tesco, that was a real like learning time about how you collaborate with a partner who is really tough, and how do you genuinely build joint value. So that gave me really strong grounding. I did that for a few years, and then the plan had always been to move across into marketing, and so I moved across into marketing after that. And I spent most of my time at L'Oreal on working on Maybelline, which was super fun, really fast paced. And so actually, whilst I was in this big blue chip company, I'd actually found myself on a brand that had more of that sort of pace that you might expect in a sort of startup scale up world. So, we didn't launch something once a quarter. We launched like 10 things a month, and you had to be across that. And so all that sort of energy and buzz. So that was really a good learning curve for me. I got onto the Marketing Academy Scholarship, which some of your listeners might know. Really recommend it as a program. It's a leadership program, really. And as I was going through that, I just sort of thought, I don't want my boss's job. So therefore, kind of, what am I doing here? And I'd always had this hankering to go into a smaller business. And I just thought, actually now is a really good time to do that. I've got a good grounding, but if I stay here much longer, I would have ended up being like a decade at L'Oreal. It feels very difficult to leave. So I made the leap after actually having had some coaching as part of that program, and that was really useful because the coach kind of said to me, well, what's your biggest fear about it? What's the worst that could happen? And actually playing through that was very helpful. And I decided that actually the worst thing that could happen wasn't that bad. So I went for it. And I moved to an Australian beauty brand, which was big in Australia, but really small in Europe. And actually I found, I was talking to somebody about this earlier, I found that it was hard to make 2 leaps at once. So this might be useful for people listening, that I wanted to move to a smaller business. I could do that within beauty. And I was getting quite a lot of interest to do that within beauty. When I was trying to make 2 moves and go to a smaller business and maybe move category, that was harder. So I ended up staying in beauty doing that. And then from there, I moved to Bloom & Wild, so move category. I also realized, having done that job in the middle, that I was still localizing a brand that somebody else was kind of coming up with in another country. And that was the same that it had been on Maybelline, with it being based in New York and us sort of localizing for the market. And I just thought, you know what, I'm done localizing. I want to be at the heart of things. I want to be in, where the brand is made. And so then the Bloom & Wild opportunity came my way, and it was kind of perfect timing and the perfect role for me. So yeah, so I've been at Bloom & Wild now for 5 years. I started as brand and comms director, and then I've just been kind of picking up teams along the way. And I went through VP level. I got into the C level, into our exec team, first as chief customer officer, and then more recently I've picked up the sort of final piece of the marketing puzzle on performance marketing to become CMO. So yeah, it's been a really good journey over the last 5 years. I tell everyone my job changes like every 6 to 12 months in some quite meaningful way. So it's flown by, and we've had lots of things that I had never really done before, and had been leading and learned a lot during that time. So it's been great.
Thank you. One, that was very comprehensive. You mentioned some really interesting points within that. On the I'm going to take them sort of backwards in the order that you mentioned them. So you mentioned about it's hard to do 2 changes or moves within one job change. I would completely agree with that. Certainly from a kind of headhunting point of view, change the size of the organization or the ownership style from kind of FTSE to private equity or sector, but don't try and do more than one in one go. So 100% agree with that. Marketing Academy Scholarship, obviously they have the fellowship program as well. Fantastic. We recommend it to our candidate base. I think the quality of the experience is incredible. And everyone I've ever met who's been through it said it's a life-changing experience. The coaching, the mentoring, the kind of bonding you make with your peer group that go onto the course. People often then tend to really evaluate their lives, etc., and make a job change after that. But I think it's phenomenal. I would echo that. Anyone who's really interested in kind of progressing their marketing career, have a look at Marketing Academy in terms of the options, scholarship, fellowship, etc. And you mentioned that it was great going into L'Oreal in the very beginning because it was all about marketing. And I get asked sort of frequently by graduates who are looking to come into marketing, and where should they start? And my answer would typically be with a company like a L'Oreal or a Unilever or P&G, but kind of get that FMCG grounding. Does that still hold true in your experience, or would you be giving different advice of bright grads coming into that workplace, know they want to do marketing?
Yeah.
What's the best route?
Look, I think you've got to do the route that's going to engage you as well, and that's not going to be the same for everybody. So for some people, they're just not going to get on in a blue chip kind of FMCG environment, and therefore there's no point going. And I do think now that also there are, when I was leaving university, this sort of, I'm sure the startup scene was there, but I didn't know about it. I didn't sort of know how to get into it. It wouldn't have occurred to me to go and work in a startup or a scale up. Whereas I think now that is much more seen as a strong career option. We have a lot more kind of strong sort of challenger brands that people are interested in working in. So I do think it's shifted a bit. I think if you're going to, whether you go large or small, if you go large, you're going to get some really good training. Not all of it is going to be applicable to a smaller environment, but you'll get really good principles. If you go into a smaller business, I think you just need to make sure that you get some of that structure from somewhere else, because you might not get it from your internal organization. So there are organizations like Up Club, run by a friend of mine, which gives a lot of that sort of training, but also peer-to-peer resource sharing and insight sharing. So there are other ways you can do that. There are lots of good courses on offer, but I think you do need to probably make more of a conscious effort to build your knowledge if you go outside of some of the big companies who will just lay that on for you. So I think both options work. It's going to be, you just need to be aware of the context in which you've learnt marketing, and be aware that that doesn't necessarily translate directly. So you just need to be thinking all the time, okay, well, this principle will translate and this one won't. And, you know, as and when you move on to a different context, and just being aware of like how you might have learnt things differently or be biased in a certain way because of where you learnt.
Good point. And you mentioned, is it Up Club that you mentioned there?
Yes. So it used to be called the Copy Club. It's called, no, it's called Up World now. Sorry, Lottie, she's going to be like cursing me for getting her branding wrong. Up World. And it's, they do talks, they do training. They also have like a community Slack group, so you can literally just Slack and say, oh, does anybody know anything about this? Or we want to start doing podcast marketing. Has anyone had success and can tell me what I should think about? So it's a really good way of that sort of peer-to-peer sharing as well.
We'll put a link to Upworld. So questions around the kind of strategy and team now, because I know one of your key strengths is brand marketing strategy. How would you go about writing, compiling your brand marketing strategy in a time where we're seeing so much transformational change? You know, we are living in by definition, a world of change right now. What kind of approach do you take when you're putting together your strategy?
I mean, this might be controversial, but I don't think too far ahead. So I want to make sure that we've got like a good strategy for the next year. But, you know, in our world, things can change so fast that I can think a few years out and have some like rough structure there. But like, I think I don't spend too much energy thinking about 5 years in the future, because things will be different. And then I think with strategy, I think it's just a scary word, and you just have to simplify it into what it really is, which is choosing where you want to go, what are you going to focus on and not focus on critically in order to get there, and then what's the plan. And I think if you think about it more as choices and a plan, it feels less scary than, oh, I need to build a strategy, which always feels like you need to be more intelligent and more knowledgeable than you are. And then, yeah, I think be agile and accept that your strategy from one year to the next might need to shift. Or actually, maybe, you know, you've got a couple of pillars in there that really just truck on for a few years, and that's great. But I think you can, and you change your tactics. But I think you need to just be comfortable that what you thought was right one year then might not be right for the following year, based on how things have changed.
That makes perfect sense. And I guess if you then relate the same things to team, how do you adapt your kind of, what's your sort of team leadership style?
What, when sort of things are changing?
Yes,
Yeah.
only because we're seeing so much change, I guess, in the way that, you know, customers are purchasing products, economic, you know, from kind of macro to micro. But what approach do you take in terms of leading your team?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I do think in a scale up world, you know, change can come around more quickly. I mean, I definitely did see it in FMCG as well, because we had sort of these influx of sort of challenger competitors come in all of a sudden. We were like, whoa, this is changing everything. But yeah, certainly in a startup scale up world, you probably see that and feel it more quickly. So I think with the team, you need to be very, very clear that everybody understands why you're doing what you're doing, and also that you're signaling when you need people to change the way they're doing something. So you know, I will sometimes, like, I'll, you know, record a little video if I can't get in front of everybody and just be like, hey, look, you know, here is the latest financial numbers. This means that we need to do this over the next 6 months, and just and explain why, because you know, if people don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, they're obviously going to make decisions that don't map to what your end goal is. So and really making them understand the nuances, because even if you're saying, you know, you're investing for growth, you're still not going to be doing that in every area of your business. You're still going to have made strategic choices. So then the people who are maybe working in areas that aren't getting the top line message of we're investing for growth, well, they don't understand what's going on. So you need to be really, really clear what's happening where, what does that mean for everybody's role and how we want them to do it. And yeah, signal those pivots and gear shifts very, very clearly. Acknowledge when there is a gear shift, because sometimes people are like, oh, but this is different from what you said 6 months ago. And you just need to be like, yes, it is. It is different. You're absolutely right. I needed to change. But sometimes that's not completely obvious unless you really say the words. And then I think offering kind of the right inspiration or coaching for the new phase that you're in. So you know, as a Bloom & What we've been through, as like all startup scale-ups have in the past kind of 4 years, this sort of, okay, get profitable, focus on profitability, and then come out of that successfully, and then say, okay, cool, we're back in growth mode, self-funded growth. And I've needed to just put in some moments for the team. So we had a full team workshop in January on challenger mindset, and how we really get back into that, because having been in profitability mindset, it is different. And so giving them that as something to hold on to and say, okay, yeah, I've got a new framework for thinking about my work in the coming year is really useful. And also just, you know, I think talking to the team about seeing, you know, what are they learning in each phase of when things are different. So when we were in profitability mode, I was saying to my team very explicitly, look, I know as marketing teams and brand teams, creative teams, this might not feel that exciting, but if you can do this now, you know, I absolutely bet you this is going to happen again in 5-10 years, whatever it might be. And now you're going to be really well equipped. So think about what's your playbook now, that you'll, when this comes back later in your career, you're going to be like, oh, I know what to do here. And then equally, when you're in growth mode, okay, what does that look like? And how do you do things differently? So trying to encourage them to see, like, that business is cyclical, it goes in phases, and you need to be able to operate in both environments, basically.
Oh, I love that. I think that's one of the best answers we've had, Charlotte. I like that very, very much. You touched on some of the priorities that you've dealt with as a business over the last few years, but what do you think may be some of the more general priorities that CMOs will be looking at in the next, you know, 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a buzzword, isn't it? But AI is a thing. It really, it is. We need to work out for each of our businesses, what are the right platforms and tools that we might want to bring in? How can we use some of the, you know, open access free tools to streamline our processes, make things more efficient, so and basically drive the maximum value from the team. And we're really excited about it at Bloom & World. We had a great session. One of our team led an amazing session the other day, teaching everybody how to prompt better, basically, so that we could make better use of some of the free tools. And I was so amazed at how people are using it already in lots of different ways. So we've got loads of use cases, and now it's really about scaling it. And what I say to the team is, nobody wants to replace your job, but we've got so ambitious as a company. How can we harness this to, like, you know, meet all our dreams faster, basically? So, you know, I think working out, there's such an influx of tools that it is going to be just sifting through which ones are actually added value and which ones are not. And creative, I think, is linked to that. So, you know, creative has always been important in marketing, and especially for brand marketing, but in the past couple of years, it's become really important for performance marketing as well. And so continue to adapt to those creative trends, what's engaging consumers. I'm sure that will continue to evolve, and I'm sure AI will play a role in how we can sort of meet those changes. And then I do think we're still in a volatile environment. So we're recording this a couple of weeks after Trump's gone crazy with tariffs, and you just don't know what's coming around the corner. So I think being ready to pivot, we've talked about, being in profitability mode, being in growth mode, but I do think we're now in more of an era of sustainable growth versus that sort of artificially funded growth, which maybe was going on 5 years ago. So I think being really clear on how you grow sustainably and retain the ability to pivot if you need to.
Yes, I think that sounds like very pragmatic, balanced advice in that area.
I
Very
hope we
smart.
won't have any big shocks in the next couple of years, but who knows?
Well, the last question is around advice, really, as much as anything else. So when we were chatting offline earlier, I was saying that, we started doing these Q&As because it was really for our head of community who aspire to be CMOs, and kind of what's your story, how did you get there, etc. So what advice would you share with someone who might be in a senior marketing manager or head of marketing level role, who's setting their, or even director level, who's setting their sights on CMO? What, through everything you've been through, what advice would you share to kind of guide them on the way?
I mean, first of all, it sounds really obvious, but make sure that you genuinely enjoy leading others because it is a different job. You're not in it, in the detail so much. Yes, of course, I get to see the campaign work that the team are doing and input, but I'm not in there building campaigns and coming up with ideas. So, and that's really fun work. And so you do need to have an acknowledgement that your work is going to look different. You'll still have input, and you'll still be able to shape things, but other people are going to be doing that work. So if you kind of love the craft, then actually maybe leadership isn't for you and you want to stay in your craft. And so you have to get a real buzz from seeing your team deliver and grow. And also being interested in the business as a whole. So, C-level roles are not just about leading your function, they're about leading the business. And so quite a lot of my time in our exec meetings is talking about topics that have got nothing to do with marketing. So, you get the opportunity to contribute to the strategy and the culture of the business, which is a real privilege. But you need to be interested in that world that's outside your kind of maybe professional expertise so far.
And we talk about growth mindset on the Q&A as well. And there's a clear link between all of the senior marketers that we interview, that everybody has this kind of very positive mindset. Appreciate positive and growth mindset are two slightly different things. So whichever one you want to kind of tackle, but do you have specific habits or rituals that you follow in order to maintain positivity, that open, positive growth mindset that you'd be able to share?
Yeah, I like to think of it in terms of energy, because I was talking to Abby Dixon on her podcast recently about growth mindset, and the thing that really came to me as I was thinking about that was it takes a lot of energy to continually be doing things that you don't really know how to do and that you're learning. So if you're constantly learning and constantly trying to come up with new ways to solve new problems, it's not the same as doing the same old things on repeat year after year. It does take a different type of energy. So actually looking after your energy so that you can feel excited about that rather than, oh my God, and overwhelmed and stressed by it. So do whatever you need to do to maintain your energy. That might be exercise, that might be seeing friends, that might be just taking some restful weekends and not running around all over the place, which I have a habit of doing. Sometimes I need to clear my diary. So there's maintaining your energy. I think the other thing is you have to just be responsible for your own confidence. And whenever I'm sort of facing into something thinking, oh, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this, I always go back to, well, you've done loads of things before that you weren't sure how you were going to do it, and it was fine, and you got through it, and there was a good result at the end. So you have to sort of be your own cheerleader. So I think that's really important, and remind yourself of your previous successes. And I think you also need a bit of grit. So, and that's really linked to that confidence, is it? So, you know that you're going to move through that learning phase. into competence, and that's going to feel really good at the end, but it takes a bit of grit whilst you're moving through it.
Yes, you're spot on there. I like to be your own cheerleader as well. I think that's really important. Just kind of remind yourself you've done it before, you can absolutely do it again.
Yeah.
Charlotte, thank you. Fantastic answers. I know they're going to go down brilliantly with our audience. I really appreciate your time, especially as I know just how busy it is at work, exciting times for your business. Thank you ever so much.
You're so welcome. It was nice to chat.